From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
Good evening and welcome to this special edition of Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Matthew Roy and thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight we take a look back at some of the top stories from our health team, from efforts to prevent teen suicide to how mobile health clinics are having a positive impact.
Tonight, a Cronkite News special report, Breaking the Silence. Native Americans have the highest suicide rates in the nation, and young Native Americans face an even greater risk. Here in the Southwest, efforts are underway to overcome the stigma of talking about mental health and to help Native youth build resiliency and connect with their culture. I traveled to White River, Arizona, where those whose lives have been touched by suicide came together to offer prayers for those lost and words of support for those left to carry on. On a cool summer's day in the White Mountain Apache community, a group of people gather to remember loved ones.
We tend to blame ourselves for what happened. We tend to beat ourselves down because we weren't there.
Tonita Harvey is much too familiar with the feeling.
We should have been there. We could have been there.
Her cousin died by suicide a few years ago, but the memory of her passing is still fresh in her mind.
It was very tragic for all of us to get the news early in the morning and wonder and then research and figure out what happened. And you have a lot of questions. You know, you don't know where they're going or what happened. Did they suffer? What were they thinking? All these whys.
Her faith at a crossroads.
It questions your spirituality.
When the tragedy occurred.
In the saddest way. You don't know what the true meaning of life is if somebody does this. You know, is it good? Is it bad? Is there a God that cares? Why didn't he step in and say something? That's why I'm here, for my cousin. And, you know, I have other friends that have killed themselves too, you know, and it's just sad. It's sad knowing that they're hurting and we can't come up with an answer.
The Life is Precious initiative by the Apache Behavioral Health Services tries to at least come up with support through suicide prevention walks like this one.
You think you're alone, but being out here, I see that there's other people. You know, you remember there's other people, other families that suffered.
Harvey is just one of many families. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S., and according to the CDC, suicide disproportionately affects American Indians and Alaska Natives the most among any other racial or ethnic group in the country. Apache Behavioral Health Services hopes to combat these numbers by helping the community open up
just the awareness that it brings
about how to help each other out.
You know, if people are starting to talk about it a little bit more, maybe people will have the courage enough to say, I need the help. And people will be there to, you know, be able to identify when someone is at risk.
Bless the people that don't know how to ask, you know, because it's a tough battle.
The CDC reports suicide and mental health issues are highly stigmatized in Native American communities, second only to HIV or AIDS.
It's been a taboo for anyone to talk about it here in our community, and so having this open space, maybe someone who's at risk can think, maybe I can talk to them. You know, maybe they'll be able to listen to me.
Just to be there, just to listen, that's all that matters.
And at the end of the day, you might just see a couple of orange peels left behind. But what you might not see are all of the footsteps that the community left behind too. Walking out of today a little stronger.
For us to just come alongside each other and encourage each other and comfort each other and say, you know, we can do this together. That's what we're all here for.
A little more resilient.
And I think that's what we all need to know.
Than they were yesterday.
Is that, you know, there's other people out here that care and love too.
The walk is held every year, and the goal really is to empower the community by allowing them to see that they're not alone, and that together, by starting this conversation, they can make a positive difference. And it's a difference they say really needs to be made, especially among young people. This CDC data tracks suicide rates nationally, and this yellow line right here shows how suicide disproportionately affects Native American young people compared to other ethnic groups, especially for those 15 to 34 years of age. There were 151 deaths by suicide in 2016, but that's only part of the story. 340 of those people made attempts that resulted in hospitalizations. There were 2,000 attempts overall, and 12,000 people reported that they had seriously considered suicide. And among all adults, Native Americans were 2.5 times more likely than whites to report having serious psychological distress. The key to reducing these numbers, according to mental health experts, is teaching coping skills that address feelings like these. I visited Native Health in Phoenix, where a youth resiliency program is helping young Native Americans build better coping skills by building hand drums.
I believe I was started on this path because when I was 11 years old, one of my peers, they completed suicide. And I was the first one to see it. And changed my whole life. We have such a strong, beautiful culture that I'm so proud of.
Say, I am proud to be indigenous.
You really see the beauty of who we are as a people. But then you also see the bad.
There's a lot of hardships, you know.
There's a lot of healing that needs to be done. I believe it's so vital. Our young people, our American Indian, our Native Indigenous people, we have the highest rates of suicide. Young people, they're striving to find their identity. And if they're growing up out here in the city and they don't have those connections with, their holy places, or if they're not going to ceremony, they could be lost very easily.
How many of y'all want to make a hand drum? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
We are reaching out to young people, those that are growing up in the city that don't necessarily have a direct connection to their homelands or their communities back home and their families and the traditions. And we're trying to give them something here where they can have a connection, a personal connection with who they are as Indigenous people.
Be proud of who you are. You might go into this world and you might feel all this energy over here. You might feel all this energy over here. Son, that has nothing to do with you.
By reintroducing that strong sense of who they are, it's like giving them a tool to combat all these things that are coming at them.
Everybody grab your hide like this. You just hold it and you put your blessing into it. And that's how we're going to start this.
We're hoping that we can give these young people that sense of pride, that strong sense of who they are.
All right, y'all, now we can go.
They were able to create something that was solely theirs. And, they created their own personal design. And it's all a journey for self-discovery, self-identity.
What I learned today is how to make a drum. It's like a reminder of who you are and not to lose who you are with the world around you.
How you drum? How you drum?
Our youth are our next generation. They're the ones that are going to be our next leaders. So if we can impact change with them, then the future is going to be better for our communities.
You got to say it like you believe it. Not like, I am. Let me hear it one time, all right, y'all? I want y'all to feel it. Say, I am proud to be indigenous. Say, we are still here.
The one thing that, I always tell young people is to be a Native person in America right now is incredible. That means you come from such strong blood because your people survived. You come from really strong ancestors.
Touch your chest, your Chicxulub, your heart. Say, I'm still here. Say, I'm alive. I'm in 4th grade and I'm feeling good. I don't know, somebody's in 4th grade, I don't know.
That's what I want our young people to recognize, to know. Be proud of who you are, of that identity of your culture, because it's so unique.
Take your drum, you'll find a design in there, and that design will relate to you. And they say, this is a renewal. This is like a new beginning, but you have to take care of this. And they say if you take care of this, the medicine from this will take care of you.
Culture, identity, spirituality is going to be the answer for a lot of the social ills that we face as a people.
Native Health is an urban health clinic with locations in Phoenix and Mesa. The organization offers culturally sensitive wellness services as well as community programs like these. Leanne told me that while she knows their youth resiliency program can't reach everyone, she hopes to at least help as many young people as she can. And if you or someone you know is in need of immediate support, you can reach the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. For this Cronkite News special report, I'm Jennifer Alvarez.
If there's one thing that Arizona is known for, it's the extreme heat. Anthony Totri is in the Cronkite News Media Center with a look at how the state's youth athletes do their best to keep cool. Anthony?
That's right, Mackenzie. There were 182 heat-related deaths reported in Maricopa County in 2018. And although the majority were adults, Arizona's extreme temperatures consistently affect youth athletes. I have found out the lengths some trainers are going to prevent the worst-case scenario.
Most at-risk populations are certainly children and the elderly, and then people with other medical issues as well.
High school and youth sports are in the midst of their seasons, but with the temperatures outside sometimes reaching deadly conditions, there are a number of ways to prepare for the Arizona heat.
And go!
Saguaro High School's head athletic trainer Nikki May takes air and surface temperature readings hours before each practice. The football field is equipped with water cannons. May said the cannons can drop the temperature of the turf by 60 degrees.
We make modifications to our practice gear depending on what the weather's looking like outside. So we either change practice times, or we take gear off, or we don't condition in our pads, things like that.
Sweet Feet Training, which trains young athletes in the Valley, puts hydration at the center of their practices.
And making sure they're hydrated every single day, you know what I mean? Just to be preparing themselves to get in that habit, to take on the season full-fledged and be the best athlete that they can be.
With temperatures in Arizona sometimes reaching 115 degrees, hydration is obviously important. But how much water is enough? Well, that's not going to cut it. Professionals recommend at least 1 gallon 2 to 3 days before practice just to be safe.
I recommend that if you don't have an athletic trainer, that you weigh in and you weigh out of practice. And every pound of body weight that you lose, you have 2 to 3 hours to consume 24 fluid ounces for every pound.
While athletes should focus on hydrating well before a practice, coaches like Franklin feel responsible for putting kids in the safest situation possible.
The safety of our athletes is everything. All the training that goes into this is so that these players can perform at their best level on game day. So making sure that the kids are training in safe environments is very, very important to us.
In the case of an athlete suffering from heat exhaustion, it's recommended to immediately cool his or her body temperature, and in the case of heat stroke, do the same while also placing a call to 911. In the Media Center, Anthony Totri, Cronkite News.
Our big story tonight, a glimmer of hope for Alzheimer's patients as a Phoenix-based company says they may be one step closer to a cure.
Alzheimer's disease is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States, but the company's new high-tech treatment plan is giving some hope.
Cronkite News reporter Frankie McClister joins us now from the control room to explain. Frankie?
Yeah, NeuroEM Therapeutics says that the wearable device that they created, it goes on your head. It's showing some promising signs for those with Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's disease is such a terrible disease that anything that might help is worth examining.
Paul Coleman knows this all too well. As a researcher with ASU's Biodesign Institute, he's dedicated his life's work to studying Alzheimer's disease.
For a long time, Alzheimer's disease was regarded as just growing old. Oh, he or she is senile.
But around 1975, it was recognized as an official disease, and since then, millions of dollars have gone into research and looking for a cure. Among them, NeuroEM, a Phoenix company that now says they may have stumbled upon a device that may be helping patients. In a statement on their website, it says one of their clinical trials has shown the reversal of cognitive impairment in Alzheimer's disease patients. This just after 2 months of treatment using the company's wearable head device. The cap sends waves into the patient's brain, improving function. Coleman says he's cautiously optimistic about what the company says they've been able to achieve.
I find myself wondering how solid are their results? How many people have they tested?
For now, NeuroEM's clinical trial continues, with researchers hoping their bioengineering technology succeeds where drug therapy has failed.
And the state where we're at now is that we have a clear path forward, and that path involves a test for early diagnosis of the disease and a way to treat the disease very early in its course.
And that study included 8 patients in total. Now that cap, it's not available commercially yet, as it's still being in development. In the control room, I'm Frankie McLister, Cronkite News.
When someone can't access basic medical care, what do? Well, you bring the medical care to them. Cronkite News reporter Scotty Gange went to Surprise and shows us how a group from the University of Arizona is doing just that. Scotty?
According to the Association of American Medical Colleges, Arizona ranks 44th in the country when it comes to total active primary care physicians. Now that can make it difficult for many members of the community to see a doctor, but this initiative is now bringing them comprehensive care on wheels.
It's one of the best things we can do for each other.
Thank you both. Okay, have a good one.
You as well. Offer support.
Yes, I give you a hug because I'm a hugger.
Now, it's no new sentiment, but a crew led by Dr. Cecilia Rosales at the University of Arizona has found a new way to lend a hand.
1, 2, 3.
It takes a really special type of person with a special type of personality and lived experience to be able to provide the service. It's not just anybody can do it.
When we weigh them on the scale, do we ask them to take off their shoes?
It's a team full of individuals who volunteer their time to provide preventative health screenings inside Arizona communities.
Great. They'll ignore certain things just because they might not afford it. I mean, imagine having, do I put food on the table or do I go to the $75 appointment?
It's a population with limited access to primary care doctors.
But many times, and for most of the people that we interact with, they do not have insurance. They do not have a primary care provider. And it doesn't mean that they don't have access to care, they just don't know. Everybody has access to service, regardless of whether you have insurance or not.
Well, you know what? It's been forever since I've been in the hospital, so doctor.
The University of Arizona owns 2 of these mobile health units, with one station in Tucson and another in Phoenix. According to the U of A College of Public Health website, the units have delivered over 38,000 services to over 8,000 people in just over 3 years.
From the outside, it looks like you guys have saved a lot of lives doing this.
Well, I really hope so. Yeah. But as we say, if we touch one person and we can help one person, I believe that's perfect for us.
The care doesn't end in the valley. Through the U.S.-Mexico Health Commission, Rosales and her team were able to purchase 11 total mobile units to place in various cities across the country with a high concentration of Latinos and people in need of care. And doing all of this, oh, by the way, at zero cost to their community.
They ask about, do I have to pay for these services? And they find it interesting that it's free of charge. Our mission is to get people access to care.
Do you have any coffee today?
Early this morning.
Okay.
While the group specializes in care for the human body, it's their concentration of support for the individuals on a personal level that makes their job truly special.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Really helpful. Yeah, I never looked at that, so now I know.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now you know. I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's why I'm so passionate about what I do and being able to be part of this program, because I've been on the other side. I know how it is not to be able to go to the doctor or have to wait.
Yeah, I got to do better. I admit, I'm not. And I was an athlete all my life until I got older. I played football in college.
You did?
Professional football.
Nice.
And I know better.
And you guys have helped a lot of people through this too.
We have. I think we have. Yeah. And we do it with a lot of love and a lot of passion.
Whether the wheels serve as a simple checkup or a wake-up call, it's always good to have a friend.
Here you are.
Thank you, Doc.
Have a nice day.
I will.
As mentioned, Dr. Rosales says the 2 mobile units in Arizona have allowed over 8,000 patients to get medical care and counting. These clinics on wheels are funded via a grant. In the studio, Scotty Gange, Cronkite News.
The quickest growing population in the United States, Hispanics, has the lowest autism diagnosis rates. But why?
Medical experts say language barriers and semantics may be the main reason. Daria Yasmin reports on the resources available to help families.
For one Hispanic child that receives a diagnosis, 1.6 white children received a diagnosis.
According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the prevalence of autism among Hispanics is lower than other ethnicities across the U.S. In Arizona, that number is even lower. This could be linked to a language barrier when it comes to MCAT. MCAT is the modified checklist for autism in toddlers between 16 and 30 months of age. The results could lead to an evaluation of the child. Lourdes Lirma says her daughter Nayara was not evaluated correctly.
She is 32 years old, and she was misdiagnosed, probably when she was around 4 years old. And they said that she had mild mental retardation instead of autism.
Children can be diagnosed with autism as early as 2 years old, but are most often detected around the age of 4. That was not the case for Nayara.
At that point, those many years ago, they didn't know much about autism until we found out until probably she was around in her 20s.
Lourdes says at the time she didn't have the proper tools and resources to help her daughter. Now, Lourdes and Nayara run a beauty line and are surpassing others' expectations. In Arizona, there are currently multiple organizations that provide resources for people in the Hispanic community who have autism.
It is really important to really seek those supports that are available in the state. There are organizations like SARC that could potentially support and help, not necessarily providing the services ourselves if they're not available or if they're not the right fit for that family, but we're also a resource organization that could potentially guide the families on navigating those systems that are available and they just don't know about.
According to OR, with knowledge of available resources, more diagnoses can be made.
Even though there's not enough, but there are more resources, we are able to identify and diagnose more Hispanic children these days than it was in the past.
In Phoenix, Daria Yasmin, Cronkite News.
SARC and other local organizations refer resources and have programs for people starting as young as 2 throughout adulthood.
As of 2017, there have been more than 3,000 reported deaths from Alzheimer's in the state of Arizona. That's 193% increase since 2000. Cronkite News reporter Gabrielle Oliveira spoke to the Alzheimer's Association to find out what the future may hold when it comes to this disease.
Every year, the Alzheimer's Association releases a facts and figures report. The latest report shows Arizona has the fastest growth rate for the Alzheimer's disease in the country. The report also projected that Arizona would score from nearly 37% to nearly 43% in dementia prevalence compared to other states in the years to come. This year, the projected number of Arizonans who have dementia is about 140,000. An estimated 5.8 million Americans live with Alzheimer's, and Arizona is currently preparing to deal with the increase of patients who live with the disease. According to Katie Scavarce, the communications director of the Alzheimer's Association's Desert Southwest chapter, the increase is due to many different factors.
One of the risk factors for dementia generally is age. So as you probably know, Arizona has a high aging population that also factors in the fact that many people retire to Arizona. So with the increased rate of people retiring to the state, that increases the numbers there, as well as that baby boomer population of probably 55 and older that are starting to age up to 65, and so you see a higher prevalence of the disease here.
The Alzheimer's Association encourages anyone with questions to call 800-272-3900. The Walk to End Alzheimer's will be later this year in various locations and dates across the state. From the Broadcast Center, Gabrielle Oliveira, Cronkite News.
Breastfeeding uncovered in public is a controversial topic that has made national headlines, but one app is working to change that stigma.
Reporter Andrew Christensen takes us onto a bus that is looking to make breastfeeding a positive experience. Andrew?
That's right, Chris. I got to take a look inside the Breast Express, a bus owned by the app Pump Spotting, which partnered with the Motherhood Co. Whether you're a mother breastfeeding in public and exposed or covered up, this bus is looking to make mothers comfortable with their bodies. Babies crying, typical when they are hungry. The Motherhood Co. partnered with Pump Spotting, an app that allows people to find a spot to nurse on the go.
It's normal to feed their babies, however, they choose to do so, and that we support them and encourage them to get out of the house and find community not only online but in person.
Pump Spotting's Breast Express aims to provide mothers a comfortable place to nurse, equipped with a kitchen, changing stations, and a restroom. The bus was hosted at the Motherhood Co., which provides breastfeeding support, yoga classes, childbirth preparation, and a mommy support group.
Anyone is able to come, whether you pump, breastfeed, or give formula and bottle feed. That's what I love about the group, that it's very open, anyone can come.
From California to Boston, the 40-foot Breast Express is a place for mothers to relax and breastfeed, and maybe have a few snacks. According to the CDC, over 50% of the babies born in Arizona in 2015 were exclusively breastfed through 3 months old. That number plummets down to just over 25% of infants that were breastfed through 6 months old. Owner of the Motherhood Co. says her goal was to enrich moms through support.
We created the Motherhood Co. Our mission was always that we could never do any of this alone, and we all own separate birth businesses as well, and we tell our mom clients that all the time, that they have to have each other and create community.
The Breast Express has 3 more stops in Arizona before heading to Los Angeles. In the studio, Andrew Christensen, Cronkite News.
That's it for this special edition of Cronkite News. Thank you for joining us, and for top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.